Come on through, Cookie. I want to put my soapbox. That's basically it. Let's talk about drag and all its forms. What, Thank you so much for clicking on the video. This is actually going to be my review, and it is late, but better late than never. For Feud, Bette and Joan, this is season 1, and this is episode 2. Now, let's start off first with a correction, because I had the information that it was actually 3 episodes, which is incorrect. It's not. This is going to be 8 episodes, and it looks like there's probably going to be, going forward, other feuds that this series will actually take on. So, brilliant. I think it's a brilliant idea from FX. So, with that being said, let's move on into this second episode. This second episode really did, for me, what I got out of it, it was more so, there wasn't a whole lot. So the review's not going to be very long. It wasn't a whole lot, but it showed the similarity in the two of them. Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. And it also showed some of that stereotype of the fake, because we always talk about what women had to do back in the day and how the men kind of ran everything and the women were so docile, and that sex was forced upon the women and different things like that. Well, as we go on, you're going to see that wasn't always the case. That wasn't always the case. Sometimes the sex part of it was used against the men as well, and we don't talk about that much. And love them both dearly. They were both very, very talented actresses. They are both iconic, but they were both whorish as hell. Okay, let's go. Anyway, so the first thing we actually see there's this very pretty young girl, blonde girl. She actually was approaching Joan and asking Joan for her autograph. And as Joan says, "Oh, okay," and she says, "It's for my grandmother. She's been loving you since she was a young girl." Baby, you could cut the tension with a knife. Do you understand me? She was looking at her like, little bitch. And she signed the autograph. I said, okay. After she signed the autograph, she went to the producer, Bobby, and told him, that girl that you hired to play the neighbor in the movie, she needs to go. She needs to go. She's not a good fit. She needs to go. Wanted her fired. He kind of played Joan off, was like, yeah, Joan, all right, I don't really have time to recast. Whatever. She was like, are you serious? Okay. So then she went right on over to her arch nemesis, honey, busted in there on Bette, told Bette something about the girl. She's like, did you see that girl that's playing the neighbor? Betty's like, she played right on to, she just manipulated Bette. Told Bette, did you see the girl? She said, yeah, she's young, beautiful, nothing. She's not harming anybody. Nobody's worried about her. She said, it's okay. It's fine. And she said she came with really, Bobby spoke very, very highly of her. And she said, yeah. She said, yep. Right now he's speaking highly of her. What happens when he starts sleeping with her? What happens when she starts having additional scenes? And then she ends up with more scenes than you. I'm just saying. And she walks out. And it was like taking candy from a baby. Bette, a few minutes later, honey, got her ass up, went out there to Bobby and told him, basically, either get rid of her or I walk. So they just literally band together, and then we see the girl leave, and they got her fired. So they were, for all intents and purposes, they were a good match to fight with each other. Like they were each other's best opponent and each other's best adversary. Okay, and it was the best. I was like, they are just too damn much. Um, yeah, it was just a mess. And then they showed more information. They kind of showed where Warner 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 Brothers kind of brought uh, Jack Warner. He literally brought Joan in to battle with Bette because he hated Bette. He hated her. He hated her. He started giving her roles to Joan because remember, Bette was still having successes after Joan before she fell off. Mildred Pierce, which was huge, one of my favorites, but that was actually for Bette. And Jack Warner gave it to Joan to get back at Bette. And it ended up being a classic. A mess. A mess, a mess, a mess. So, okay, so let's talk about this party. There was a release party at Jack Warner's house. And Hoda was there. Or Hedda, the journalist. She was there, and baby, they drove her nuts. This was something that happened back in 1962. Child, they went to the party. She tried again in a different setting to try to get them to say nasty things about each other. Adversary night, honey. They sat there and threw compliments at each other again and had her hot as a firecracker, baby. I said, oh my God. It was a mess. She just couldn't get any leeway with them. And so Hannah started doing a lot of moving around, and Bobby Aldridge and Jack Warner actually got together, and he was actually viewing things that they had already done. And he started talking to him, and he was saying, "Do you see?" He said, "You can see that they literally hate each other." And it comes out. He said, "When they're together, their work is just phenomenal because of the fact of how much they hate each other. You can't pretend that well. Nobody acts that well." And he said, "I want you to keep the cat fight going. Keep the cat fight going. Leak something to the press." Bobby Aldridge was like, "I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that." He's like, "That could be so disastrous." He's like, "I'm not doing that." He says, "Oh, you are. You are doing it." So he says something um, to Bobby. It was on his mind. He was laying in the bed with his wife, and he had said something to her. The wife told him, "Listen, that doesn't sound good. I don't think you should get into that. Gossip is like a deadly poison. And once you get it poured out, you can't control it. You need to leave that alone." And he's saying, "Well, no, 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 no." And then she hit him with a 1-2 punch, baby. She said, "Even you're not man enough to satisfy two women." And he's like, "What do you mean?" She said, "You're not good enough to satisfy both of them. You're not. If you're going to try to run the gossip and all that between the two of them, you're not man enough to keep both of them satisfied." And he's looking at her like, "Well, what more are you trying to say?" And she says, "Your little German thing, honey." She said, "See, all that did was an affair. He had a little affair going on with a German woman that was down there on the set." And she said, "See how the gossip trickles." He said, he said, "There is nothing going on. That's nothing but gossip." She said, "Mm-hmm. But see what I mean? How gossip is a poison. It poured from the set, and it made it all the way home with you." And baby, she turned around and gave him her back. I said, "Okay." So at that point, I'm saying, well, I guess he's going to listen to his wife, but men don't do that. Men always think they have the answer. He didn't listen to his wife, and he got started with that shit. He literally sat up there and leaked some things to Hannah that were said between the two. Bette had actually made a comment that Joan wore fake tits. She wore tits, breast enhancements in her bra, and that they were as hard as a rock, and she was scared to chip her tooth on them, baby. And Hedda actually posted that, and Joan had a fucking fit, and that's how it all got started, baby. And it just enhanced their cat fight, and it was just on from there. Joan literally came running in there. Bette was in there like she didn't even know how Hedda even got the information and didn't give a fuck. But it was funny to her, you know? And she was like, she said, girl, everybody know you pad your bra, girl, get on out of here, laughing. And she basically went to him and she's snapping out with him and carrying on and told her, you tell her I'll sue her if she keeps making slanderous remarks about me that will stop me from working. This, that, and the other. And she's going all into this. And at that moment, she saw Joan. They were out in the hallway. She saw Joan slither up onto Bobby Aldridge. Because, see, she had fucked Bobby Aldridge back in the past. She had fucked him and been getting her way with him. And Bette Davis seen that. And this is when I said they were both two whores for the most part. She was doing all that, and Joan ended up, he came over her house the one night. She called him at 2 a.m. in the morning. He came over there, honey, and her husband was supposed to be out of town, but he ended up walking in on it. It was a mess. She tried to fuck Bobby that night. And the husband came in, and then Bobby ended up leaving. He was about to fall into it. He ended up leaving and going back home. And Joan just kept on going with the shit at that point and told the husband she was sick of his shit and ended up kicking his ass out. So from that point, she actually had another little situation with her fucking Bobby to get what she wanted and to get her way, okay? So after she seen all that go on, then she ended up going and making a claim to Luella, Luella Parsons, for her paper, and said that Bette Davis was old enough to be her mother and lied about her age, and she looked old enough to be her mother. So then Bette says something to Joan, and they're at it. And Bobby's like, stop that fighting. And then he gets her and he takes her to the side and he's talking to Bette. And then the next thing you know, he tells Betty's like, you're my only friend, this, that, the other. Tell her, it's only what I think that matters. You're doing a wonderful job in the picture, all of that, trying to appease her. And she says, well, okay. So he ends up she wanted him to come down to do a private little time with her on the weekend when they were off to run through some lines. And it was where she wanted to do her, I've written a letter to daddy, that part where she's doing that. So they actually sat through that and actually put that together, him and her. And then she said, I need to thank you for this. It was all part of her plan, of her hoarseness. And she says, let me take you to dinner. He said, I have to take my wife to dinner. She said, oh, cool, bring her. Now, that ain't nothing but a straight up whore. Took him to dinner that night, and then shortly after that, she made a phone call, and then she started fucking Bobby Aldrich as well. And just like his wife said, he was going to fall into that trap. He fell right into that trap, stuck in between the two of them, fucking both of them, and then pissed off the wife and had another affair going on. I think he let the German woman go, but them two, fucking both of them. A mess. So in this one episode, I saw how they, again, they're one and the same, and they were very. It was shocking that they were such outwardly whorish vipers. I was like, wow. It was interesting. I can't wait for Sunday for the next episode to see what we find out next. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.